Today, I want to take you deep into something most people misunderstand: the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. You think you know them. You think they're just a boring government agency. But what if I told you the IRS is not who you think they are? What if I told you their creation, their operation, their role in your life, and the way you perceive them is far from the reality? Let's start at the very beginning. The IRS wasn't always around. In fact, the United States operated for most of its early history without a permanent income tax. In 1862, during the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln and Congress created the first temporary income tax to fund war efforts. That tax expired. It was reintroduced during World War I, still temporary. It wasn't until 1913, with the passage of the 16th Amendment, that a permanent federal income tax became constitutional. But here's the thing. The IRS wasn't born out of a need to fairly collect taxes. It was born out of political pressure and financial manipulation. It was a creation fueled by the alliance of government and private banking interests. It was and is a tool. You see, the IRS is often portrayed as this big, scary agency that just wants your money to fund schools, hospitals, highways, right? But have you ever stopped to ask, where does most of your income tax actually go? Here's a hint. It's not what you think. Most of your tax dollars don't even touch the services you assume they fund. The bulk goes straight toward paying the interest on the national debt, interest payments to a private banking cartel, particularly the Federal Reserve. Yes, that's right. The Federal Reserve isn't even a government agency. It's a private entity, an entity with shareholders, banks, powerful families, financial institutions with no direct public accountability. The IRS is essentially the collection arm of that system. Think of the IRS like a tax farmer working for a feudal lord. The IRS doesn't create wealth. It simply extracts it. And most of what it extracts doesn't benefit you in a direct way. You're led to believe that taxation is your duty, patriotic even. Pay your fair share. But who defines fair? Fair to whom? Fair to what agenda? You're taught from a young age to fear the IRS, to comply without question. You're taught that mistakes will ruin you, that the IRS can seize your bank accounts, garnish your wages, put liens on your home, that you have no real power against them. And in many ways, that's true. The IRS was structured with one goal in mind: total compliance through fear, not persuasion, not voluntary consent, fear. Now let's go deeper. Have you ever wondered why the IRS operates with such wide latitude? Why are you guilty until proven innocent in tax court? A direct reversal of how justice normally works. Why can they freeze your assets before you even have a hearing? Why can they force you to pay first and argue later? Because the IRS operates under administrative law, not criminal law. Tax issues are civil matters unless fraud is suspected. That means you have fewer protections. That means the burden of proof often falls on you, the citizen, and they leverage this imbalance ruthlessly. Now, let's talk about tax codes. The US tax code is over 70,000 pages long. It's intentionally complicated. No ordinary citizen can navigate it fully without expert help. Even IRS agents sometimes don't understand the code, and that's by design. Complexity breeds dependency. You are made dependent on accountants, tax lawyers, advisors, software. You are made afraid to handle your own financial affairs without oversight. And fear, again, breeds control. Let's zoom out. Ask yourself, why do the richest corporations and individuals often pay little to no taxes? Because they understand the system was built to favor those who can afford to exploit the loopholes. Because they have lobbyists who helped write those loopholes in the first place. The IRS is tough on the middle class and the small business owner because that's where consistent, collectible, controllable revenue comes from. The IRS doesn't regularly audit billionaires. It audits average citizens because it's easier, because billionaires have armies of lawyers, because it's about low-hanging fruit. Now let's get even more controversial. What if I told you that much of what the IRS collects isn't even strictly legal? There are credible arguments made by former IRS agents, constitutional scholars, and judges that question whether the 16th Amendment was properly ratified. There are arguments that taxation on labor is a violation of your natural rights, that your labor is your property, that taxing income is akin to taxing your existence itself. Some say it amounts to involuntary servitude. forbidden under the 13th Amendment. But whether you agree or not, realize this. The system is built on your ignorance of your own rights. The IRS doesn't ask you to volunteer your taxes because they have a legal claim over you. They ask you to volunteer because they need your consent to maintain the illusion of legality. Yes, you voluntarily file your taxes. You voluntarily report yourself. You voluntarily waive certain rights. Because if they had to forcibly seize everyone's income, the whole charade would collapse. Now, about audits. Audits are not random. There are algorithms. There are red flags. There are quotas. And often, audits are used not just to collect revenue, but to punish dissenters, to silence whistleblowers, to target political enemies. Presidents, civil rights leaders, journalists, many have found themselves coincidentally audited after criticizing the government. The IRS has historically been weaponized. It's a political tool as much as a financial one. Let's go even darker. During times of economic collapse, who do you think will step in to confiscate assets? To enforce emergency financial controls? That's right. The IRS has contingency plans you've never heard about. Plans that empower them to seize property, cash, and securities if the government declares a national financial emergency. Most people think the IRS is just tax returns and refunds. They don't see the machine behind it. They don't see the enforcement capabilities, the surveillance, the data mining, the social engineering. The IRS knows everything about you, where you live, where you bank, where you work, what you earn, what you spend, what you owe, what you own. You are profiled financially in ways you cannot even imagine. And with new proposals, like expanded bank reporting rules, they want even more. They want to track transactions as small as $600. Why? Not because they think you're committing major fraud, because they want total visibility. They want the ability to control, freeze, and redirect the flow of money, should the need arise. Financial surveillance is financial control, and the IRS is the tip of that spear. Now let's look at mindset. The average American views paying taxes as an inevitability, like death. But the ultra-wealthy view taxes as an optional expense, something to be minimized, outsourced, negotiated. Why the difference? Mindset, knowledge, preparation. You were taught to comply. They were taught to strategize. Now, let's tie this together. The IRS is not the villain. They are a symptom of a system that prioritizes debt-based economics, private control over public institutions, and dependency over empowerment. The IRS is a mirror showing us how far we've drifted from the principles of true liberty, personal sovereignty, and limited government. So what can you do? First, understand the game. Ignorance is no longer an option. Educate yourself. Learn what deductions, credits, and shelters are legally available to you. Learn how corporations are structured. Learn how trusts work. Learn how to protect your assets legally. Second, change your relationship with taxation. Stop seeing yourself as a powerless victim. Start seeing yourself as a strategist. There is a legal tax code. Use it, leverage it. Third, realize that your greatest financial power lies not in earning more, but in keeping more, in investing wisely, in creating multiple streams of income that are tax efficient, in legally shielding your wealth from overreach. Finally, wake up. The IRS is not just about taxes, it's about control. Control of your labor, control of your choices, control of your future. The IRS is not who you think they are. They are not your ally. They are not your friend. They are not your neutral accountant. They are an agent of a system that was never designed for your freedom. But knowledge is power, and power is leverage, and leverage is freedom, and that freedom is still yours to claim.